So we have with us Mr. Sampatkumar B. Aratti, and with him, he's going to be with us for HR Speak Season 6, Episode 6. And of course, he's a forward-thinking, seasoned human resource professional with proven record of accomplishments across continents. He's a change manager dedicated to continuous business improvement, focused on enhancing revenue and streamlining human resource teams by being a business partner to the managing director and a coach to middle and senior management team. I really love the way this has been written. Diligent in driving profit maximization through multifaceted business approaches and contributed in strategic initiatives at regional and global levels. Multiple industry experience in automobiles, software services, software product development, and manufacturing, with 16 years of experience leading change across organizations. So that's with us. And as you have allowed me, I'm going to call you Sampath, sir.
Yeah,
And
please.
Sampath, today's topic is very unique because we are calling it role of HR leaders in enabling workforce engagement and building intercultural sensitivity. And the word sensitivity itself indicates that the topic is built in with dilemmas because it's going to deal with the ethos of the organization to drive emotions of people. And how do we then factor in the emotional angles, the diversity, the different elements of people in an organization? And with that, how do we ensure that there is workforce engagement? So, a little bit about you beyond what I have said, if you want to.
Sure, Shweta, thank you. Thanks for that very nice introduction of mine. Just to add a bit, what I would like to share today is more from my experience of what I have seen in my little over 24 years of work experience, predominantly in India, about 15 years in India, 5 years in Germany, and 4 years in Singapore now. So I will try to make it as engaging as possible with some specific examples that I have seen in my career, where I have implemented a few things, where I've learned a lot of new things from colleagues, like what I see a few of them here on the call. So I would really appreciate if there are some questions or if some thoughts which are contradicting to mine, I would be really happy to learn from you. So that's in brief about where, of course, one of the unfortunate thing I would say is, though it is 25 years, it's only 3 companies that I have worked for, predominantly because I believe in learning in an organization and contributing back to the organization before I move on. So 10 years in Bosch, about 4 years in Software AG, and 12 years now in my current company. So 3 German companies and 25 years of work experience. So what I'll be talking about is from that limited experience of what I have worked in the 3 companies, all the 3 German companies coincidentally. But of course, I will try to get in a bit of experience, a bit of examples from a lot of HR coaches, HR mentees that I've had in my career till now across regions, be it in Singapore, Germany, or in India. So over to you, Shweta.
Thank you for being a part of this episode today. And so, a question really bothers me at present is the sentiments that different generations are bringing to the organization, and how do we balance the different sentiments? Because when we look at the generation which are from baby boomers, they were more from the angle of security, sense of security, sense of working with an organization, a 9 to 5 thing. but now it is more about what is it that the organization has for the employees. So we have two different sides of the world coming together in an organization to contribute to a common goal. And considering that, what is now becoming the purpose of an organization when it comes to workforce engagement?
Okay. Before that, Shweta, maybe I must say this before I get into the answering or giving my perspective, not answering. Uh, Hats off to the NHRD group because I have been a part. Unfortunately, I have not been able to play a very active role. I was a member in the earlier part of my career, and I know now NHRD has gone even beyond. Shweta, are you able to hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, great. Uh, I mean, I have heard a lot about NHRD. I've been a part of the few programs, and I know that now NHRD has gone beyond India because I know there is a chapter in Dubai and as well as chapter in the country where I am working currently, Singapore. So hats off to all of you, all the champions of NHRD, and the wonderful work that you are doing for empowering the younger HR lot. So that is something which I would like to place on record before I start giving my perspectives on the first aspect, the first topic, employee engagement. So in fact, this regard that I have for NHRD is what made me to accept when Mr. Basu reached out to me a couple of months ago and asked if I can share my perspective. Yeah. So coming to the specific topic, Shweta, about the need and how the organizations are looking at the employee engagement perspective. In fact, employee engagement, I'm sure all of you who have been practicing HR professionals will agree with me, is not a new topic. This topic has been there almost 20, 25 years, though it is coined in different terms. And when I started working, when I was just fresh out of my MBA college and I started working with Bosch, one of the projects coincidentally that I had to work on was on employee engagement. And in fact, even today, I'm not too sure how it is in your part of the world in Calcutta, but one of the HR jokes going around in many places is HR is good in putting rangoli, as they call it in India, rangoli, or taking people out for picnic because they feel that is engagement. But to me, honestly, that is also engagement, but that's a small part of the engagement. So when I did a study, and in fact, I would like to rather answer that question through that perspective. What I did, I studied the expectations of employees across. And Bosch, as you all know, is a 100-year plus old organization, a family value driven organization. And when I studied, it was so surprising for me that the expectations of employees were completely different. I'm sure some of you would have read the book First Break All the Rules, where they clearly say that an employee joins an organization but leaves their managers. And that is where one of the major tasks for HR is to empower or make the line managers as the first HR managers. So coming back to this engagement study, what I realized is, though money does play a very engaging role or gives a very significant importance for a lot of employees, but that is generally in the initial phase of the career. And as you move up, there were people whose expectation was just job security because my kids are studying, and those days, I'm talking about 1999, women working was still quite low comparatively. So especially if you are a single earner, and again, unfortunately today with the divorce rates that we have, if it is a single parent, financial stability becomes that much more important. So that is the engaging factor. In the older age, people are like, okay, I know I'm in my comfort zone. I do not want to get out of this. I don't know what is the challenge of getting into a new job and getting adjusted to the new environment. So my engagement is, okay, my job is secure. That is most important. Whereas a young guy from the student, a student fresh out of college, his expectation is completely different. As you said, Gen Z, Gen Z, whatever. Because most of them, I would say, are fortunate because they come from the digitalization era. Even those days, 1999, it was not too different. Though the number of people today who come out with high digitalization skills, I'm sure some of you who are married and have kids, like, I mean, I have a son who is almost 14 years. And anybody in the house has any problem with any of our mobile or laptop, he's the first man to go to. He's our go-to man. So the same thing happens in an organization today. So organizations who have thought old workforce can easily be eliminated, we don't need that, in my perspective, and I've seen enough and many of them, will go down the drain very soon. Also, there are old school thought organizations who think, let me have the old people, old horses for the courses, as they say, and not too many youngsters. That's also not right, because today, if you want to get into digitalization, if you want to talk about, even in manufacturing companies, if you want to talk about Industry 4.0, you obviously need the youngsters. So looking at that perspective, I know I'm clubbing engagement and diversity for the simple reason, when we talk about diversity, which we can also talk about a bit more in detail slightly later, but diversity to me in age, which is one small component of diversity, does talk about the different needs of the workforce as far as engagement is concerned. And how do organizations do it? From my little experience of 25 years, I can tell you, or for example, just as an example, especially when we look at intercultural differences, in Germany, I found there were people, when I worked there in Germany, I found employees with 20, 25 years of work experience who are called as software engineers. They really don't mind. They want to go deep into a particular topic. And for them, it doesn't really matter whether you call me a software engineer or a senior software engineer or a manager, assistant manager. Whereas back in India, these do matter. My title does matter, not maybe may not be for my kids and my family, but to my neighbors. Oh, this guy has been in the industry for so long, he's still a software engineer. So these things also matter if you want to engage your employees. And maybe that's a reason why some of these financial institutions or organizations, you may know, their starting designation is assistant vice president. Wow, fantastic. So, I mean, right or wrong, we don't know, but these are also ways of engaging people. So just to be a bit more specific on what we did in that Bosch experience that I had, we said we need to have different touch points for the employees who are in different phases of their life. And if we go back and check our own lives, I'm sure some of you could be very young here, some of you are middle managers, and some of you are senior managers. The perspective of life changes, and that possibly is also the reason why the great resignation happened. I can give you a couple of more examples on engagement. It is not only these programs that we do, it is not only these wonderful benefits that we give our employees, but are we walking the talk? I can give you an example from my own company. I've been fortunate to work with Lapp, which is a family-owned company, a German company. For the past 12 years, I've been working with them. And one of the first few things we did during COVID, the entire management team took a 50% cut in salary, and the owners of the company took a 75% cut in their salary. But we announced openly, even for those of our manufacturing employees who could not come back to the factory, there was not even a single paisa cut in their salary. No cut in the salary. Nobody was laid off for the entire period of COVID and even after, because we are a family valued company. That maybe gave an impetus for people. And we are not paymasters, let me tell you honestly. Today, hardly, our attrition is hardly anything. In fact, in a manufacturing space, not even a single person has left us in India for the past almost, 15 years now? In fact, 2 people retired recently. So just to sum up, in fact, I'm sure you all know the cost of disengagement. Recently, I read about a report from Gallup's in February 2024, just a couple of months ago, which says $8.8 trillion is the wastage of money because of the disengaged employees in the whole of the world. And you can imagine $8.8 trillion per year is what we are losing. And that shows about the significance of engagement, according to me. I hope points are clear from my side, Shweta.
That was a revelation and very introspective, because there were times these factors were probably considered an objective of the HR function. Now it is an organization uh, strategy or plan or imperative, which is discussed over and over again in the boardroom as to how do we keep the workforce engaged in a way that they show up and they
Yes.
contribute, just not show up, because then there are different segments in which workforce engagement happens. There is
Yes.
there is a group which could, or which could just show up and say that I'm doing my 9 to 7, I'm contributing 9, 10, 11 hours, I'm being in office, and then they are going back. There is another group which may say that, I want to be in office for 4 and 5 hours, but in these 4 and 5 hours, I will contribute the productivity that is desired from me. There's another group which says that I could work from home and still contribute the way the organization wants me to. And there is another group which may say that I want to work from home, and unfortunately, they land up moonlighting. With
Absolutely.
these kind of diverse sentiments flowing in the workforce, what are your views?
Well, very sensitive and a current topic, because I'm sure some of you would have heard of what happened in, I'll not name the companies, a couple of big MNCs in IT, where 400 to 500 employees lost their job in just one day because of moonlighting, as you rightly said, Shweta. This work from home or getting people back to work is one of the biggest concepts or biggest challenges a lot of HR professionals are facing, not only in India, but even in Germany and Singapore, as I know about, because we have organizations, I have colleagues there who are working there. Yes, I mean, if I look at it from an employee's perspective, you might as well say, well, when COVID happened, you all allowed me to work from home. And there is a lot of statistics which shows there was a huge productivity increase. People were not spending time on in the traffic, crazy traffic, especially if you look at places like Bangalore. And whenever I visited Calcutta, I've seen even Calcutta is not so great as far as traffic is concerned, though may not be as bad as Mumbai and Bangalore. But so all this led to increase in productivity. But unfortunately, what we have also possibly sidelined is the impact on the mental health. Yes, for organizations, it was a great benefit because some of them said, okay, now you do not need to travel to other countries. So we have a lot of cost saving as far as travel is concerned. So you're not going to stay in a hotel. So that cost is reduced. Some of them even went to the extent of saying, okay, let me shut down my office because rent is saved, electricity is saved, transportation is saved, food is saved. All that was saving, which helped us in COVID, no doubt about it. But today, though moonlighting is one small thing which has been the disadvantage for the employers, sorry, because I'm sure you all know about moonlighting, where people started working with multiple companies. And it was surprising to know how they got caught. They got caught because they were getting provident fund from two companies. And today with the technology, you cannot fool all people all the time. Yeah. So that is how these people who are engaged in moonlighting got caught. That could be a reason why employers started saying, in fact, it is ironical, Zoom, the company which helped all of us to actually work well in virtual environment or hybrid environment, as we call, was the first company to say, I want every one of them to be back in office. And there were reasons. Beyond moonlighting, there is a lot of productivity issues. There is a lot of mental health issues. And there is no demarcation of work and time. Some people who actually started working, they know that they start work at 8:39, but they never know at what time they close, because with MNCs especially, you have late calls, you have global calls, global meetings, and as late as 12:31 in the night. So obviously that started taking a lot of hit on the health of the employees. There was burnout, there was mental issues, and worst case, there was a very blurring effect. Home, which was supposed to be where the family lives, became a place of work. So what do the kids do? When there is a Zoom or a video call happening, you wanted your kids to keep mum. Okay, if the kids are mature enough, they can understand. But how about kids who are in the crying age? How can you shut their mouth? So all these, beyond this, what? Because since surprise, I mean, coincidentally, this is my PhD topic as well. I started my PhD a year ago after almost thinking of doing PhD for so many years. So the year I turned 50, I said, okay, let me start my PhD. And my PhD topic is going to be this. And the major challenges I see is building the culture in the organization. especially with the growth in the organization or the growing organizations. When you get in new talent, how do you integrate them into the teams? How do you make them feel one amongst the big organization? How do you build an identity for the organization in the form of the culture of the organization? So these are certainly the challenges why the organizations today are still debating, what do I do? How do I get back my employees back to office? And yes, it is certainly challenging. I know of big names, without taking those names, who have said, even if the attrition rate is increasing, I don't mind. I want my employees back in the office. But what we have done, again, from a practical angle, what we have said is, yes, people have got used to this comfort of working from home, working from hybrid. But what we have done is we have gone for a unique way. I'm sure some of you have already done it, possibly no rocket science. What we have said is we would not like 100% hybrid or 100% work from home, nor do we expect 100% work from office. So we would not like to drag you back. We are not the HR team. My HR team is not policing across. This is not only in India, all countries. India, I'm currently responsible for India, China, Korea, Japan, and Singapore. All these 5 countries. What I have told my HR team is, we are not going to police. We are not going to check when the employees come, but we expect the managers to have their teams with them at least 3 days in a week. So that way, the employees get 2 days of flexibility. At the same time, they come back to office 3 days, meet the team, get engaged with the team, and people have started loving it again. So to me, it's a very dicey question to ask, to think about, because I know there have been a lot of people who say, I will leave an organization if the organization doesn't allow me to work hybrid or work from home. But at the same time, let's also admit that for an organization, its entity, its identity is mainly from the culture. It is mainly from the team bonding, because it is only that. Today, we hardly have individual contributors. Majority of them have to work in teams. And for that team to be built, you need to put the face to the name. You need to meet people. Otherwise, it's not going to be that easy. So that is my perspective or my view, Shweta, on the work from home and engagement perspective. And getting back people to office is a big challenge. I know there are companies who have used carrot and stick. They have said, okay, if you don't come back to office, your promotion will be withheld. You may not be getting the promotion that you want. You may not be getting the same salary increments like others who come back to office. As they rightly say, out of sight is out of mind. So it's up to the organization and the employees to together agree and understand what is the need of the hour. But I don't think personally that there can be one simple answer for this particular issue or the topic that we have on hand. That's my perspective, Shweta.
I would request you to touch upon what would be the culture building imperatives an organization can maintain, which begins to attract employees to work, rather than making employees feel that they are being policed or are being obligated to be present at work. Um, yeah.
Absolutely, Shweta. As I said, yes, there are companies who are following different philosophies. One which says, okay, if you don't come back to office, I'll not even pay you for those days. Very harsh in my perspective. There are organizations who are saying, okay, you can work from anywhere. I really don't care. And that's where workathons, as they say, like vacations, people are going for working, sitting on a beach. All that is fine for individual contributors. But how do you build this culture? I mean, when this topic of culture comes up, I mean, it's a very dicey thing. What is culture? It's something which cannot be easily defined. You can put it in as many words as you want. But the way the entire team behaves in an organization actually defines the culture of an organization. And this cannot be taught over a Zoom or a Teams call. You need to meet that person. And that was the reason why are organizations spending in millions on travel budgets? It is not to make the employees enjoy. When I go and meet my colleagues in Germany, I mean, if I had to give my own example, when I went and stayed and worked there for 3 years, the type of bond that I have built with these team members today, though our cultures are completely different, and cultural sensitivity is another big topic. But today I can easily work with them even in a virtual call, virtual team. But for that to happen, I have spent 3 solid years. And that is what organizations today are trying to impose. But impose may not be a right word. We need to attract people to come back to work. And carrot and stick could be one policy because it all depends on your culture and the type of employees that you have. But for me, making them realize, and that's what we have started feeling in our company. For example, we started having nice Friday, not parties, but some events like cricket, some events like potluck. So where employees get to know others. Yeah. And it's the same, be it India or Singapore. Germany could be slightly different because of the cultural upbringing. Yeah. Because the way I talk to my colleagues here I mean, for example, if I know my colleague's family member is in the hospital, when I was working in India, I never bothered to even think twice before I asked. And some of us even went to the hospital to meet. But it's not the same back in Germany. Yeah. And I learned it the hard way. You can't even ask whether you're living together or you're married, your husband, wife. In India, it's quite common to ask all these. So what is culture? How do you talk? How do you bond together? Yeah, in Germany, maybe they'll go out for a beer in the evening because they don't talk too many personal things during office hours. But in India, it's exactly the opposite. Yeah. So it differs from company to company, country to country. But the fact is, this is a burning topic. How do I get back people to work? And from my perspective and from my little experience in implementing policies on this topic across Asia Pacific, I am of a firm believer that it is better to entice them, not through money, not through carrot and stick, but through an approach where employees, after coming back to work, start feeling the fun of being together, of working together, of crying on the shoulder of your manager. I mean, a manager and an employee should not be like a boss and a subordinate. And I have been fortunate enough to get such managers in my career. Today, if I have any problem, I know I can go and talk to my manager without any inhibitions, without even thinking, oh, I've done this mistake. If I go and talk to my manager, will my salary increment be impacted? Will my bonus be impacted? I don't think all these because of the type of relationship that we have built. And these relations cannot be built. Yes, I know some of you might tell me that a lot of love relationships have happened over Instagram or Facebook, but it'll be an interesting statistics or interesting PhD for somebody to do on human psychology to check how many of them lost how long. I know of a lot of those cases. It doesn't even last for a few months, forget about years. Yeah. So in my I mean, again, this is like a marriage. Employee working in an organization is like a marriage, and it is changing. Even even in the social context, couples staying together for 10 years is becoming rarity, unfortunately. Fortunately, I don't belong to that generation. But the same way, applying it to the organizations, there is a need for the employees to understand the organization, the culture, the values, the ethics it stands for, because you are expected to behave in the same way, and only then you can gel well into the team. So if I have to cut the long story short, from my perspective, yes, we have to get our employees back to office. Only then it becomes an office. Otherwise, it's a building without anybody. But for that, I would rather have programs or make them feel that it is fun to work in the office rather than sitting at home crying alone when you have problems. Celebrating alone, it doesn't make any sense. Celebrating alone doesn't really make any sense. Yeah. So that's my take on the topic, Shweta.
Thank you so much. That leaves us to think on how we can contribute to bringing.
Shweta, I'm not able to hear you. Hello.
More best practices that you have exhibited in your role to create the sense of belongingness among employees in different stints that you have played in the leadership in HR?
Okay, since I lost you for a few minutes, I don't know. Let me repeat the question as I understand. What you are asking me is some of good practices which I have implemented or I have heard about
Build the sense
during
of
my tenure
belonging.
for employee engagement, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Apart from some of these examples, let me give one classic example which I can never forget in my life. And this was 2000, the year 2000. I just fresh out of college, my first job in Bosch. And there was this, some of you who belong to that era would know that there was a Y2K problem and a lot of companies were uh, sending people back home. So Bosch also lost a huge order. In fact, they had to close down one of the business units, business lines across the globe. So there were 200 employees working in that area. So everybody thought, okay, the pink slips are on the way because the whole telecom industry, actually, it was the telecom division which was closed, and the whole telecom industry was not doing well. So everybody thought that they will all lose their jobs. But I still remember the CEO of the company, the MD, he came to my cabin and said, Sampath, we should have a town hall tomorrow. And the first thing I would like to announce to everybody is everybody will be safe in the organization. Though we have sold off, the company's revenues are not great, Y2K problems. So if you are not in that era, if you should just go back and check. And that led to almost, there were 200 employees, as I mentioned, almost 196 employees, if my memory is right, were retrained because, of course, four of them said, no, I want to work. It was not that the company asked them, but they wanted to leave because they wanted to be working in that domain only, which Bosch couldn't have given because they had closed down that business unit. They retrained them, gave full salary, and everybody was absorbed back in other business units. What happened because of that, even when there was a huge boom in the industry, none of them left because though we say human memory is short, people do not forget what the company made them feel, especially in the tough times. During good times, you might give them a car, you can give them a bungalow or whatever. But during bad times, and that also goes well with the example that I gave of my own company, where we did not sack anybody, where we did not reduce anybody's salary, even though our revenues were down drastically. And Bosch was another example that I had seen. And even today, some of them are almost retiring, nearing retirement age. I am still in touch with those guys, and they are still there in the company. And believe me, they could have, Bosch is not a paymaster. They could have easily got 50 to 60% hike in other companies if they had left when the market boomed up, but they did not leave. That shows what engagement is all about. Yeah. One more example, since you specifically asked, and maybe after that we can break it for Q&A if you'd like to. I'll not name the company. That company is a huge company, American company. Surprisingly, we do say that American companies do not have a great culture of binding people, but this was an extremely good example that I've seen personally. A good friend of mine was working as the head of HR there. They had to close down because of various reasons. The company took such extreme care of the people. They announced it 1 year in advance. Every employee, even if they had worked for 1 year, they were announced very good packages. Apart from it, the HR team was given a mandate that everybody should be placed in a decent organization. And how do I know about it? The HR guy, the head of HR, a good friend of mine, he literally requested fellow HR colleagues, called us to his office, explained the strengths of every employee whom he had to place based on who would fit our organization. Not only that, what I really liked, in fact, I was told the chairs on which these employees were sitting were worth 25 to 30K. And that was the type of fancy that they had. Maybe one of the reasons why that company had to close down. But they said, whatever belonged to you, including the chair, you could take it home without giving a pie to the company. I was wondering why they are doing this. And then it struck me, if at all this company restarts again, believe me, all these employees who have been laid off today will be the first to apply back to that company. So that is what I call as employee engagement, what I call as bonding the people to the organization. So if somebody, and how does this come? And that's the last aspect I would like to touch upon. It was the initiative of this good friend of mine in HR. And of course, it has to be supported by management. HR alone cannot do any magic. We are as good as what the management wants us to be. But yes, we can stand up and put our foot down and say certain things. I know of companies during COVID who laid off people with such, I mean, I'm sure I need not have to name the company. Some of you would have seen the videos. A CEO coming on a call and telling, okay, you guys are laid off. How ruthless, how insensitive you could be. I know of other companies who said, okay, if your card admits, allows you to get in, that means you are in the company. If it is not working, that means you're out of the company. How ruthless, how insensitive. So these are the companies who will find it difficult when things go well for the employees and it's the employees market. But if you really want to be what you stand for, yeah. And the last example I can share, one of the companies has this tagline, trust is all we build. And the managers, the first thing they do is they distrust their employees. So a simple thing for me, always walk the talk. Whatever you claim as your mission, vision, values need to be implemented and should be top down rather than talking fancy things, putting nice things on the board. And the worst thing that you do is do exactly the opposite of it. So that's my experience, my examples that I can share, Shweta, on the topic.
And actually, what you said at the end means a lot, because there could be a lot of things, a lot of English and jazz that we can see, and when we don't feel it, the disconnect is huge. And I don't know. I mean, we've spoken from the angle of organization and
Shweta, again, I lost you.
team for managers to display along with walk the talk.
Shweta, unfortunately, I couldn't hear. Your voice was blanked out for the past few seconds.
So
I didn't hear the question at all.
What I mean to ask you is anything from the the managers of the organization, the way we have harped upon walking the talk. Of course, that kind of encapsulates everything. Anything specific that managers should or must have in their daily way of working or in their behavior or even in their strategy, which needs to be there for them to facilitate the process of people coming to work.
Yes, sure. I would say one key aspect is being sensitive to the people's needs. Let's also admit that things have changed after COVID. People have started realizing that the life is very fragile and want to give more importance to the elders at home, the kids at home. So if the managers are not sensitive about it, and for example, when we wanted to look at how we can get our employees back, I'm so happy because maybe it is ingrained in our managers. A lot of managers came to us and said, look, we have learned this art of managing our people virtually also. Because generally, in the initial phases, it was the managers who came and told, I want my team back. Because there were a lot of us who want to micromanage. I want to see what my team guy is doing. I know of some extreme cases where even during COVID, managers used to call the employees and check, okay, are you in front of your system? Can I see you? I don't see you. Are you green on Teams? So all I'm saying is have trust in people. Yes, there are some people who will misuse. It's always 80-20. There'll always be 20% of the people who will misuse the facilities. But if you can show trust, if you can build that trust in your people, in my view, half of the work is done. Because how long will the person cheat you? Yeah. And again, backed by it, if the managers have a proper system of following the tasks and a smart goals given, whether the person gets up in the middle of the night and does your work, how should it matter as long as the timelines are met? So for manager perspective, if I have to think about two traits or two qualities or two competencies, whatever we want to call them, one of them would be trust your team members. It's very important. And this is beautifully come out in that book, First Break All the Rules. And the second one, which I personally feel is important, is the ability to lead by example and thereby be a good mentor and a coach to the employees. In fact, some of us do confuse between mentoring and coaching. I myself was thinking mentoring and coaching is the same, but over a period of time and experience, I've realized, because I do have mentors and coaches and they are different. Yeah. And for those of us who would like to understand the difference, the only thing I would say is a coach need not actually be from your own area. A coach is the one who's trained in asking the right questions. That's it. He will not give you answers. A mentor will give you answers. He will lead you by example. Yeah. So to me, a manager should be a good coach as well as a mentor. And that becomes much easier if you can lead by example and have the great trait of trusting your team members, belief in your team members, and of course, try and help and support the team members who are lagging behind, because all of us don't have the same competencies. Some of us might lack certain competencies, and you as manager need to focus on it. Yeah, in a house, if there are 5 siblings and one of the sibling is not well or not able to earn, we will not kick them out, at least the Indian culture. So let's have the same culture, similar culture back at the workplace. And as managers, if and our responsibility as HR is try to coach or guide, because I always say this in my companies, wherever I have worked, the HR is just a supporting role. The team manager or the line manager is the first HR manager, because HR, generally we have one HR for 300, 400 employees, if you're lucky. How will you know all of them? So train the managers to have these traits. I'm sure the company would be a success. Shweta, back to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that. I didn't see anyone bringing in any questions as of now.
No, there are a couple of questions I can see. In fact, Chayan Bhattacharjee has put 2 questions.
Okay. He's given it to you, please.
No, it is there in the chats that I can see here, Shweta.
Okay. So probably it's not visible for me as of now.
Sure, I can read out the question as well as give my perspective to it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I'm aware that we have 9 minutes, but if there are any other couple of questions, we can certainly take it. Otherwise, let's answer these 2 questions asked by Chan. The first question is, during layoffs and post that effect, how does HR deal with the morale of employees as employee engagement indeed goes down? Very well said, Chan. As I also gave the example of that company of a friend of mine who's working as the head of HR, even if you want to lay off, there has to be a very solid reason for it. And simple guidelines, which I have seen work, like the example I gave of my own company, the management took a 80% cut. The owners of the company took a 80% cut and the management took a 50% cut. It was very clearly showing or leading by example. In spite of doing all this, if you have to lay off people, be a bit more considerate. Understand what you can do to that employee. If you have done all that, then you don't need to worry about this, Chan. That's my experience that I've seen, even in organizations who had to lay off. If they laid off with a human touch, yeah, because again, at the end of the day, I think it was, I met Mr. Bajaj once, and as those of you who are following Bajaj, one of the very old and successful companies in India, they also had to lay off people at one point in time. And in fact, Mr. Rahul Bajaj, who said he had tears in his eyes because there were people who came and told him, what do I go back and tell my family? What do I go back and tell my kids? Yeah. So be a bit more considerate. If you have taken care of all that, for example, giving them a helping hand into transitioning to a different company, as this company did, the example which I shared. If you have done all this, the people who stay back still would be motivated enough because they understand the need of the organization, have proper communication channels established, and be very transparent and genuine, not for the fake things, because as I said, so if we do these, then motivating the employees or engaging them is not a big deal. But unfortunately, and I don't always blame only the HR, like I don't always give the credit only to HR, because it's always HR who has to initiate these thoughts. But there has to be a management buy-in. Let's admit that. And today, fortunately, HR sits as a part of the board. I am a part of the executive committee in most of the companies that I work for. So I can enforce my thoughts. But earlier, unfortunately, HR was more on the admin side, and possibly they didn't have a say. HR had to do what the management says. So in that situation where you have not dealt with your employees properly, I would be very clear, it becomes a humongous task for the HR to engage or bring up the morale of the employees, because they all will be in a fear. There was no proper communication. Nobody knew why XYZ was asked to leave. He was performing very well according to them and things like that. Whereas if there is a proper communication, transparent way of laying off people, telling them very openly. I still remember one of the emails that Airbnb CEO sent across to all the employees who were asked to leave. It was so transparent, so clear. And I'm sure today Airbnb is doing very well post-COVID again. I'm sure those employees would love to apply back. Yeah. So that is my answer to the first question that you asked, Chayan, where you asked about how does HR deal with the morale of the employees. So I would say karma strikes back, as they say. If you have dealt with your employees whom you have to lay off in a proper way, in a humane way, it need not necessarily always mean give them all the benefits, because if you are able to give it, then you would not have laid off in the first case. So that's my short answer for the first question. Second question, also interesting. Are HRs really empowered to intervene in the way work process happens? Because as demonstrated from time to time, HRs are just a watchdog as employees face brutal work processes. Very practical, realistic question, Chayan. And thanks for asking it boldly. As I admitted, as I said, it's very true that HR at one point in time, I would say 90 to 95% of the companies, HR was delegated only to administrative tasks. The management or the CEO or the board comes and tells you, okay, lay off 100 people tomorrow. HR's responsibility is call them. And some of the HRs were like helpless. They said, sorry, I don't know why, but this is the decision of the management. I can't do anything. But HR had to face that brunt. And that's why in some organizations, people don't even like to talk to HR. They hate HR, if I may say so. Yeah. But times have changed, Chayan. According to me and my own experience across the globe, times have changed. Yeah. And HR is actively involved in any decision that any human element, human impact that it has on the organization. HR is deeply involved. And in fact, I would say not only involved, in a lot of cases is in the driver's seat. Yes, unfortunately, people-related costs are the maximum cost percentage-wise in majority of the organizations, even in manufacturing companies today, because unfortunately, Indian salaries are going sky high. But if HR has to take a stand, they need to be bold. And again, it's left to us. Do we understand business? One of the reasons, according to me, why HR has not been successful to some extent is because we think, and this includes even Gen Z or whatever, because when I do mentor a lot of students from various HR colleges, MBAs, and when I ask them why HR, oh, I want to serve people. Wow. I say then you have to just wear a kavi dress and go to Himalayas. You need not have to come to HR. HR is not only being pro-employees. I need to understand business. I need to give solutions in such a way the ship will not drown. Otherwise, it's very easy for HR to make everybody happy. Give them 50% hike every year on year. The company will drown. So unless I understand business, unless I make sense to the management team, unless I make proper arguments, then of course I need to be bold enough, because I know there are HRs who say, oh, if I speak against the management, I'll be the first to lose the job. Yeah, to me, you better lose a job rather than making yourself look like a fool in front of hundreds of your employees who say this HR doesn't even have the guts to stand up and they just want to implement what the management says. Yeah. So if that has been happening, and I have seen it happen, Jan, I'm not saying from theory, but I've seen this in practice. I myself have been in that position of late, at least in the past two companies for the past 15 years. I'm very much a part of making all these decisions. And I'm proud to say this is one of the reasons why we decided Well, no cut in the salaries for any of the people who are earning below a particular salary. None of them were asked to leave. And we really took care of all our employees. So that's my short answer for the second question. To cut the long story short, are HRs really empowered? Yes, they are, provided we have the courage. When I say we as the HR fraternity have the courage to take the guts to stand up and say, if the management is doing something wrong, we need to have the courage to say you are doing wrong, for which you need to understand the business and talk sense to the business, make sense to the business, and give alternatives how we can still sustain and stay afloat in difficult times. That's my answer to that. So I know the clock hits 5 o'clock. I mean, 1 hour, that's what we had said. But if there are any further questions, I'll be more than happy to talk about it. I don't see any further questions on the chat.
We will also appeal you for anything that specifically comes from any of the listeners in terms of their dilemmas and how they are handling these sentiments in their zone of work.
Yeah, that I would really appreciate if others can share.
Yes, we'll do that. And very clearly, it has emerged that it's a double-sided responsibility, and by that I mean that the HR is responsible towards the management as well as the employees. The managers are responsible towards the management as and accordingly towards the employees. So with this duality in role, it becomes an imperative that trust plays out as a key character in building the sense of belongingness among employees. And along with that, the different drivers which work together in terms of initiatives which are just not limited to Rangoli and Diwali and the upcoming Independence Day activities, but much beyond that. And how do we do it with transparency and courage? That's the takeaway from today, because it's also important to have the courage to say that this is not working out, or this is how it's supposed to happen, and this is the organization expectation from you, and the other way around. And with that, thank you so much, Sampath, for this evening. We had some technical issues, but then snags do happen when it's the virtual world, and that's the reason we must connect at work, because that's where there's no technical snag. Thank you, Chayan, for such good questions that you have asked and building in the interactivity in the session. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Sampatkumar. It was a privilege for NHRD to host you. There are people who have logged in from different parts of India as well. So NHRD Kolkata plays out in the hearts of people across the nation, across the globe, like how you have given us your 2 cents. I must say there's a lot in the ocean, and it's just a drop that has been discussed here. There's more that we can take away from you, and we would really want to learn more about the PhD thoughts that you have brought in and the different organization best practices that you have spoken about. Thank you very much for your time. Wishing all of you a safe monsoon, considering the different news that we are getting. So please be safe, travel safe, and work from home if possible, when you have to. Otherwise, it's always good to be in person at work and work in teams. That's the message from today's session. And till we meet again for episode 7, I wish you.
Thank you so much.